For a long time now, I have been thinking about AI and the ways that it will change civilization. I have in my mind different ideas regarding how it will affect different aspects of life, but I wanted to specifically look into the effects that replicants will have in human relationships. For those that don't know, the term replicant is used to describe artificial humanoids in the Blade Runner franchise. Replicants are shown to be produced and sold for the general population, at least in the films. They are also not worthy of their loyalty to their owners. Anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about should watch the film Blade Runner 2049. Let's begin with the first point I want to make. Women will not be the target audience for replicants. To make a long answer short, this is simply because of hypergamy, the act of marrying up your class or caste. Why would you commercially target replicant men with no assets to women who would at least own some form of asset or another? It's like having a university-educated woman marry a slave that she had bought. It's simply not seen as a natural relationship. As such, it's to my belief that replicants who are men would likely be reserved for manual labor and security work, such as police officers or bouncers in nightclubs, with only a few perhaps being bought by homosexual men for serious relationships. The second point I will make is this. The replicant industry will be a male-dominated industry that is for men by men. This will of course be because of female replicants. To have a female replicant that is specifically tailored to you, that acts feminine, that does the chores, that is submissive to you, that will be the ultimate male fantasy. If you could imagine the prices of these replicants being around the cost of a normal middle-class home, then the replicant industry will likely become the largest industry in the world. The ideal dream for a man would be no longer to own a house and start a family. It would instead shift to saving money and buying a replicant. To further reinforce my belief in how much of an impact female replicants will have in the world, I will use China and Japan as examples. In China alone, due to the long-term practice of abortion and their one-child policy, people tended to prefer having male babies and aborting female babies. This was due to the thought that male children could work more and provide income and support for a household. The end result, as you can imagine, was a large imbalance in the number of men to women in China, with a reported 33 million more men than women. The replicant industry will undoubtedly focus on those populations, the male populations that don't have hope in finding virgin women such as themselves. These men will most likely exit the dating scene altogether and instead begin working in order to save up for replicant women tailored for them. What you are going to have is 33 million replicant women for 33 million Chinese men. If we now focus on Japan, we can see the hikikomori phenomena being widespread across the nation, with as much as 1.5 million people being hikikomori. The term hikikomori is used to describe Japanese people that withdraw from social life, instead largely becoming isolated from the outside world. For such people, especially the men, there is little to no possibility of finding a serious relationship while being isolated from the outside world. Herbivore men in Japan are also a relatively new phenomena, with the term being used to describe men who are not interested in getting married or starting any form of serious relationship. A common complaint these men have is that it's too much of an effort to try and maintain a serious relationship with a female. That may seem ridiculous to the Western world, but it isn't ridiculous when you take into account the number of hours that Japanese people spend working. There are reports in China, and I'm being serious about this, people who are literally worked to death. In an environment where both men and women are expected to work and there is little time for courtship or child upbringing, especially when you consider men who have isolated themselves from civilization altogether, you can see why replicants will become very popular with the herbivore men and the hikikomori. I have not even taken into account other kinds of people. Ugly men, for example, who would want beautiful women may instead simply opt out for purchasing good-looking female replicants that would love them unconditionally. Not to mention that the good-looking female replicants in this case would come unused. They would be virgins. They would not have had any form of previous relationships. The purchasing of female replicants would not only be desirable for men who are outcasts, but for successful men as well. There may, for example, be business magnates who would want to be loved unconditionally. And as for people who make the argument that you can't have families with replicants, I would point them towards artificial insemination and adoption. In this kind of world, you would find families consisting of a human father, a human child, and a replicant mother.